The second I saw her text, I knew Dana Pruitt had finally slipped up. "A little lazy today, aren't we?" she wrote, like she was jabbing a stick through the cage bars at a sleeping bear, smug behind her Botoxed grin. But here's the thing. She must have forgotten which one of us actually held the keys to the whole damn zoo. It was 9:43 a.m. on a Wednesday, and I was knee-deep in compliance logs for a $140 million federal contract renewal. I'd been at Elridge Systems for 11 years. I'd handled everything from Department of Defense procurement to background checks for classified subcontractors. Over a decade spent holding this company's reputation together with surgical precision, the kind Dana couldn't spell, much less respect. And now she was stirring the pot over text, perched in her CFO seat like she belonged there, which maybe she believed until you remembered her son was suddenly my new manager, and she just happened to reappear the same month he got promoted. Nepotism isn't just breathing. It's driving a company leased Escalade. Dana's always been the paper-cut type. Subtle jabs meant to sting when no one's watching. But this time she got careless. I read the message twice. No reaction. I took a screenshot, saved it neatly, flagged it as interference. Then I muted the conversation, closed the chat window, and went right back to assembling the signature packet for the buyer's counsel. Because when you know where the fault lines run, you don't shout when the ground shifts. You wait for the right foot to land. Quick pause, if you're one of the 97% listening without subscribing, go ahead and hit that button. It really helps out. And if you've ever had to pretend everything's fine while someone tries to undercut you at work, maybe throw a like on this too. Anyway, back to Dana. This wasn't her first little jab. She'd played the helpful suggestion game more than a few times, pointing out my email tone, flagging so-called delays in meetings that ran late because she couldn't remember the difference between a fiscal year and a contract term. But this text? This one was different. No smiles, no pretense. This one was documented. And that made it useful. What she didn't realize, and what her son clearly never took the time to read, was that my name showed up in one critical spot on the buyer agreement. Section 4, listed as Key Program Authority, Deal Continuity Agent. Fancy title, but it meant one thing: if I was interfered with, harassed, or removed, the buyer had the right to walk away. Why? Because I wrote that clause 4 years ago. Back when we almost lost a defense contract because some exec tried to bury a risk flag I'd raised. That clause had survived 6 legal reviews, 3 CEOs, and 2 attempted buyouts. Everyone assumed it would never be used, until a wine-drunk CFO with a superiority complex decided to send a snarky message 5 hours before signing. So no, I didn't fire back. I didn't storm into a meeting. I didn't even complain. I leaned back in my chair, took a sip of the coffee I'd forgotten about since morning, and hit forward. The email went to one person: Martin Ingersoll, the buyer's lead counsel. Subject line: Message from Elridge CFO this morning. No caps. No commentary. Just the screenshot and my full signature underneath. Then I shut the inbox and got back to work. Not out of spite. Out of protocol. Dana thought she was just hitting a snark button. She didn't realize she'd yanked the pin from a live grenade. Martin didn't respond right away. That's typical. Guys like him, federal legal counsel, they don't jump. They circulate. Slowly. Intentionally. Which is exactly what I was counting on. Once that text hit his inbox, it wouldn't just sit there. It would start sliding through a chain of partners, associates, and compliance specialists faster than Dana spills her Pinot Grigio at the company gala. I wasn't looking to cause a scene or file some official grievance. That's what Dana would have expected. That's what her son Travis would have loved. Some dramatic reaction he could screenshot and forward to HR with a fake worried note about team dynamics. No thanks. Let them keep thinking I'm the quiet one. I've always believed in the power of documentation, clean, time-stamped, and admissible. That little jab she texted? It was no longer just snark. It was now part of a documented pattern of hostility. And she'd sent it herself. As soon as I hit send on that email, I shut down all notifications. Slack? Muted. Email? Filtered into a folder labeled Echo Chamber. Calendar? Set to auto-decline everything for the next 4 hours. Not to be petty, just precise. I needed uninterrupted time to finish prepping the doc pack. Because even if this deal hit a wall, every detail still had to be flawless in case it came back online. And if it didn't, even better. I pulled up the rider again. Section 4A. Hidden in a jungle of vendor clauses and trigger terms. There was one sentence I always found coldly satisfying. Continuity of contract is contingent upon the uninterrupted access and professional autonomy of the named key program authority. Autonomy. Probably not a word Dana ever bothered to look up before she fired off that text. See, most execs don't even glance at those side clauses, especially the ones written by people like me. Mid-level. Quiet. Not client-facing. But federal buyers? They don't skip anything. Every line's a tripwire. Martin had actually flagged that clause during the original review. Asked me. Redundancy. I told him, no insurance. And now? We were staring down a claim. 2 hours went by. Still nothing. No reply. No escalation. Just the silent hum of legal machinery grinding away somewhere in a DC high-rise. Around 11:30, Travis came strolling by, smoothie in hand. Bright green, same shade as his obliviousness. Hey, you good on that SoCal cert list? He asked, like he hadn't already sent me 6 conflicting emails about it earlier this morning. Already sent, I said, still focused on my screen. Cool. Mom says to loop her in on anything mission critical. I didn't laugh. Didn't even glance up. Just pointed to the folder with the draft contract. Noted. Because real power doesn't strut around shouting. It stays quiet. It plans. And when the timing's right, it doesn't beg for attention. It flips the entire room on its head. Dana thought she could play her little throne games using her son's title and her ex-husband's contacts. What she forgot was, I built the damn scaffolding under her throne. And I knew exactly where it was rotting. So I waited. I've seen storms roll in before. But this one didn't smell like rain. Smelled like smoke. At exactly 2:17 p.m., the call began. Video on. Mic's hot. Everyone looked sharp, especially Dana, who showed up with her usual cocktail of arrogance and pearls so tight, it looked like they were strangling what little integrity she had left. Travis joined the call from what looked like a golf course. Just the place to be when you're minutes away from potentially wrecking a federal deal. The buyer's side was already on. Martin Ingersoll sat flanked by 2 silent legal sharks in black-rimmed glasses. I'd worked with Martin for years. He never spoke unless it carried real weight, the kind that could shift careers. And today? He was wearing the kind of smile you only see on someone who already knows how the movie ends. I had my documents ready to go. Timeline locked down. References clearly tagged. If this meeting went south, it wasn't going to be on me. I gave my usual greeting. Then Tanner, our VP of Ops, kicked things off with the standard. We're excited to finalize today's speech, pure LinkedIn fluff, word for word. That's when Martin raised his hand, calm and deliberate, like he was about to ask where the coffee machine was. Before we proceed with the signature sequence, he said, we'd like to confirm compliance with Section 4A of the Continuity Framework. You could practically hear the air get sucked out of the Zoom room. Dana leaned in, squinting at the screen. Sorry, what section? Martin didn't blink. He shared his screen. Right there in the center was the email I'd sent, clean time-stamped. He zoomed in on the signature block where one line stood out, bold and impossible to miss. Key Program Authority Section 4A. Deal Continuity Agent. Then he pulled up the contract PDF. Scrolled straight to the section, highlighted it in soft yellow, and circled one line with a bright red digital pen. Continuity, he read aloud, slow and steady, shall be considered void in the event the named key individual is not present and unimpeded in execution of their duties at the time of closing. The word unimpeded stood out in blood-red ink. Silence. Dana blinked again, tilting her head like she was still trying to grasp what was happening. But her jaw was too tight, her hands too still. Travis had already vanished off camera, probably faking a phone call or hiding behind his golf cart, face in his hands. Martin let the quiet hang. Then in that same measured tone added, we've received recent correspondence that could constitute interference. Our legal team would like clarity before moving forward. Tanner stumbled through some half-formed line about reviewing internally. Dana opened her mouth to speak, but Martin ended the screen share before she could say a word. Like pulling the curtain just before someone ruins the final act. I said nothing. I didn't need to. The clause wasn't vague. It didn't invite interpretation. It was clear, direct, and binding. Everyone on that call knew exactly what it meant. Dana thought she was making a clever move with that text. Martin had just handed her the live grenade she didn't know she was holding. By Friday morning, everything had gone radio silent. Payments stalled. The $140 million that was supposed to start flowing that afternoon? Frozen. Not canceled, just paused. The kind of pause that makes the whole building nervous. Like someone smelled a gas leak, and now everyone's waiting to see who strikes the next match. The first tremor hit from compliance. A plain memo, nothing flashy, titled Unscheduled Audit, Internal Communications Review. It hit inboxes company-wide at 7:12 a.m. 2 hours later, legal added a follow-up. All outbound executive communications under review. Retroactive to Q3 of last year. No names were mentioned. They didn't need to be. Then the buyer's legal team sent an external notice. Subject: Request for clarity. Section 4A: Hostile interference. No accusations. No sharp tone. Just one quiet, formal question that said everything without saying it out loud. That phrase, hostile interference, hit like a truth nobody wanted to face. You could feel it ripple through the executive floor. Like someone had smacked the C-suite through a pane of glass they thought kept them safe. I wasn't on the email, of course, but my phone still buzzed. No subject, no name, just a screenshot from someone in HR. Dana's name, plain as day, pulled up in a system log. 11 entries. 11 messages tagged for non-standard communication tone. Every one of them sent to me. No one else. The first one, from nearly a year back. You tend to overcomplicate things. Try being useful instead of right. The last? She signed it with a smug little emoji. Funny thing is, I never answered a single one. Not once. I just filed them away. Each message labeled, time-stamped, and quietly stored in a folder on my personal drive named If She Ever. I didn't know when I'd need it, but I never doubted I would. Now HR was playing dumb. We're conducting a review of communication styles within leadership, the email said. Styles. As if workplace harassment was just a design choice in Microsoft Word. But the real shift? That happened in the hallways. People who used to smile and wave at Dana started disappearing into break rooms when they heard her heels coming down the hall. Gary from contracts, usually loud and chatty, started walking the long way around the mezzanine just to avoid being in her line of sight. In meetings, nobody said her name out loud anymore. Just exchanged uncomfortable glances and let the silence stretch a little too long. The air changed when she walked into a room. Tightened. Like everyone was holding their breath, waiting to see what would fall next. Meanwhile, Travis was out here doing Travis things, tossing out nonsense like miscommunication chain and procedural clarification loop. In Slack threads, he clearly didn't understand. Every time he typed, he only reminded everyone how far in over his head he really was. Word from legal was that he tried to pin this all back on me. Said I misread a harmless check-in. But logs don't care about spin. Neither do federal continuity clauses signed in ink and backed by infrastructure that doesn't flinch. And me? I didn't gloat, didn't puff my chest. Just kept my head down. Reviewed red lines. Checked audit trails. Ate lunch on the rooftop terrace like I always did, alone. I let the records speak for themselves. Because the thing about documentation? It doesn't blink. It doesn't stutter. And it never lies. It just waits, quiet, time-stamped, and razor-sharp. Then around 3 p.m. the ping came through. Subject line. Contract writer discovery. Immediate attention. No small talk. No pleasantries. Just a legal-sized hammer dropping straight into inboxes. Turns out Section 4A was only the start. Internal counsel had dug deeper. Past the clauses, past the red lines, into the places everyone assumes are boilerplate. And there it was. Appendix 4A. Short. Neat. Lethal. Named continuity personnel, see Addendum 3. Most people never even saw it. Buried deep in the final pages of a 280-page federal contract filled with dense legalese and procurement terms no normal person reads. But Addendum 3? That one was easy. It had my full name, middle initial, exact job title, and a signature line signed by both parties. The buyer's counsel and our former CO. Dated. Sealed. Labeled. Personnel essential to contract integrity and compliance execution. The buyer didn't miss it. Not this time. The delay officially turned into a breach notice. No shouting. No angry phone calls. Just one sentence from counsel that echoed like thunder through the halls. Due to interference with the named continuity personnel, we will be reviewing contractual validity in full and may require renegotiation of all terms. Translation: back to the beginning. Clean slate. Forget the $140 million. Nobody touches a dime until the buyer says otherwise. That's when the leadership team started falling apart like a clearance rack suit. In the emergency Zoom, our general counsel reportedly went ghost pale. The first thing out of his mouth? Why didn't we catch this? Simple answer: they did. They just never thought it mattered. To them, that clause was background noise, legal filler meant to appease compliance folks. But I wasn't filler. And I wasn't in the mood to be appeased. Dana, of course, tried to spin it. Word as she brushed it off in the boardroom, saying something about flexible definitions of interference. But the buyer's legal team wasn't buying what she was selling. They didn't care if it was meant as a joke or a power move. The language was clear. The meaning locked. The clause wasn't vague. They signed it. I wrote it. 4 years ago, in the middle of a quiet storm that no one else even remembered. I remember it, though, working late with headphones in, while the office emptied out for the night. Legal had asked me to polish up a revised template. I tucked that clause into the contract like armor. Not dramatic, not loud. Just a single signature protecting the entire framework in case someone like Dana ever thought they could bulldoze process. And now? It had done exactly what it was designed to do. I didn't say anything as the emails flooded in. Didn't brag when one of the senior project managers called and whispered, "Wait, did you actually write that clause?" All I said was, "Check the metadata." Every file, every revision, every track change, they all had fingerprints. Mine were on all of it. Suddenly, everyone was reading the fine print they'd ignored. A hush fell over the executive floor. Not fear, something worse. Realization. The slow sinking truth that the guy they thought they could sideline wasn't just riding shotgun on this deal. I was the engine. And they just jammed a wrench into my gears. And now the whole thing had stalled. The emergency board meeting was called for 8 a.m. Monday. No coffee. No fruit trays. No glossy slides. Just 7 board members, a cold conference room, and the bitter taste of legal panic hanging in the air. Martin Ingersoll dialed in 10 minutes early. He looked like he hadn't slept, unshaven, unreadable, like someone who'd spent the night carving legal consequences into someone's future. Dana sat at the end of the table, pearls cinched tight around her neck, lips already curled into the shape of denial. Travis wasn't there at all. Word was he'd been advised to limit exposure, which, in corporate speak, meant they finally realized nepotism wasn't the same thing as due diligence. Martin didn't waste time. No greetings. No buffer. Just a deep breath. A tone so calm it sliced cleaner than any outburst ever could. "You signed a continuity clause," he said, then allowed that continuity to be jeopardized. He didn't raise his voice. Didn't have to. Then he clicked once and there it was. The screenshot. That infamous text. "A little lazy today, aren't we?" The timestamp glowed like a confession carved in neon. Then he clicked again. This time, Martin pulled up the clause itself, highlighted in soft yellow, precise and undeniable. Continuity shall be considered void in the event the named key individual is not present and unimpeded. He didn't say a word. Just let it sit there. Dana started to speak. Who knows what excuse she was reaching for, but Martin calmly rotated his laptop screen toward her. Slow. Intentional. Like he was offering her one final opportunity to absorb the full weight of her mistake. She looked at it. Didn't blink. Didn't speak. Because what could she say? That it was a joke? That the person she'd spent the last year undermining, micromanaging, and openly mocking hadn't felt impeded? That she didn't know what named personnel meant? Despite signing that clause herself 3 fiscal years ago? No one stepped in to help her. Not the general counsel, who looked like he was trying to crawl inside his own blazer. Not the COO, who tapped his pen against the table like he was holding a live grenade and had no idea what to do with it. Not even the board chair, who stared at the screen like he was mentally calculating how much denial might cost the company in litigation fees. Martin gave it 4 more seconds, long enough for the silence to settle into everyone's bones. Then he said, "The buyer is now reviewing alternative paths forward, including full contract withdrawal. Per Section 6.3, a breach in personnel integrity triggers renegotiation or termination." He didn't sound angry, just exhausted, like a man who's delivered too many autopsies and no longer has the energy to pretend they might be resurrections. Someone coughed. Nobody else moved. Dana finally broke eye contact. Looked down, not up. Like even she knew the room had already made its decision, whether they'd said it out loud or not. And me? I wasn't there. I wasn't invited. But my clause was there. My signature was there. My structure, my foresight, my safeguard. I didn't need a seat at the table. I'd already pulled the floor out from underneath it. At 10:42 a.m. sharp, the delay notice came in. Clean. Clinical. No bold fonts. No drama. Just a one-page PDF from the buyer's legal team stating they were suspending all closing activities, pending full internal and external review of Clause 4A compliance and named personnel continuity. It landed like a guillotine in slow motion, silent, final, and razor-sharp. 2 minutes later, legal fired off a company-wide bulletin. Effective immediately. All communication with buyer representatives must be routed through general counsel. No exceptions. Translation: step back. Don't touch a thing. Don't speak. And under no circumstances try to clean this up on your own. The damage was done. Now came the containment. At 11:03, the audit lock went into effect. Dana's access was suspended, temporarily of course, but everyone knew what that meant. Her login credentials, financial dashboards, partner threads, vendor approvals, all gone in one quiet sweep, like she'd never been there at all. A digital ghosting. I doubt she saw it coming. Or maybe she did. And that's why no one had seen her since the boardroom. The office acted like nothing happened. Conversations dipped when her name came up. Slack threads went cold if she was mentioned in the sidebar. It was the kind of corporate silence that only shows up when people realize they might be next. And me? I watched it happen like I was flipping through the last few pages of a novel I'd outlined years ago. The ending wasn't a surprise. The characters just hadn't caught up yet. Then came the email that almost made me laugh. From IT. Subject: credential suspension notification, Dana Pruitt. Body: this message is to inform you that access for the above user has been disabled pending administrative review. Please route any critical communications via the office of the COO. That's all it said. No title. No rank. No CFO. No acting executive. Just the above user. That's when I knew it was done. The building hadn't collapsed outright, but the foundation had been tugged loose. Everyone inside could feel the floor shifting under their shoes. Meanwhile, my inbox? Silent. No emergency pings. No subtle feelers. No frantic C-suite messages disguised as collaboration. Just one note worth opening from Claire, my former intern. Subject line: saw the clause. Damn. Inside, only one line. You okay? I stared at it longer than I needed to. Then I typed, better than okay. As I hadn't lit any fires. I didn't leak anything, raise my voice, or threaten a soul. I simply did the one thing no one saw coming. I kept the records. I wrote the clause. I named the consequences. And then, I waited. This wasn't revenge. This was enforcement. They signed the terms. The same ones they laughed off as overkill. Belt and suspenders compliance. They'd called it bureaucratic nonsense. Useless guardrails. Until it froze $140 million in its tracks. And the best part? I still hadn't said a word. They never called me back into the boardroom. No apologies. No, you were right. No awkward HR scripted outreach about moving forward together. I didn't expect any. When people like Dana fall, it's never dignified. It's a muted collapse followed by a rush to scrub their name from the company wiki. Instead, I got a tidy calendar invite. Consulting proposal, buyer relationship recovery. No panic in the subject line. No urgency tags. Just a neat little attempt to gift wrap the fallout. It came from Tanner. Polished. Over-edited. The kind of email you know went through 12 revisions to avoid saying the obvious. We blew it and we need you to fix it. It opened with a familiar template. In light of recent contract developments, The board would value your insights in a strategic capacity. Strategic. Please. They didn't want strategy. They wanted tria. Someone to walk into the buyer's office with a calm face and a clean record and convince them that months of backdoor power plays and reckless messaging weren't worth burning down the whole relationship. I read it twice, then forwarded it to my attorney. He replied with one sentence. Time to remind them who wrote the rulebook. The next day, our firm received a formal legal brief from my side. Short, direct, airtight. It spelled out the handover of all licensing logs, vendor access trails, and buyer communication metadata. Every interaction from the last 11 years, transferred to my independent custody under Section 8.6 of my contract. Section 8.6. They'd skipped that one too. It was an archival clause I'd slipped in after our first major FedNet renewal. A safeguard. A continuity failsafe triggered by, you guessed it, executive overreach. It said that in the event of material interruption to strategic operations, all oversight would default to the last active continuity agent. That was me. My name. My timestamp. My approval line. Legal didn't even try to contest it. They knew. They'd signed it. And just like that, the power shifted again. The buyer had already started quiet conversations. NDA protected, yes, but clear in tone. We trust the systems. We trust the record. We trust you. The company made one last offer after that. A bigger one. Consultant fee. Full autonomy. Short-term scope. I turned it down. Not because I was angry, because once you've seen what really goes on behind the scenes, how the sausage is made and how many rats are writhing in the casing, you don't volunteer to go back and clean the grinder. Let them patch up their buyer relationship. Let them reshuffle roles, invent new titles, rename departments. Let them spin Dana's mess into some isolated incident instead of facing the truth. She wasn't the exception. She was the mirror. I had what I came for. Not status. Not revenge. Just a clean transition. Permanent. Legal. Final. My own company was already registered. 2 contracts already in progress. One of them, a federal subvendor Elridge used to treat like they were disposable. Now they were calling me ma'am. Power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just files a clause, keeps receipts, and walks away holding the keys. The new signing happened with zero fanfare. No big announcement. No email blast. No LinkedIn post from Dana filtered to death with a caption like, leading with purpose. She wasn't in the room. Travis wasn't on the call. The buyer made their terms crystal clear. If the deal was going forward, it'd be with new language and new leadership. Martin, calm as ever, shared his screen and walked us through the revised contract page by page. Cursor gliding, voice neutral. Then near the end he stopped, clicked his pen, and signed his initials next to a fresh clause none of us had seen before. All continuity oversight shall be independent of executive family relations. Just one line. A firewall made from ashes. A legal way of saying don't ever pull that crap again. It was clean. Cold. Surgical. Dana was quietly reassigned that same afternoon. Not fired, of course not. Just tucked away into a role with a title that sounded important but meant nothing. Special Financial Liaison, they called it. Basically, a nameplate with no keycard. They could have saved time and just stapled a scarlet letter to her Outlook profile. The board followed up with a painfully bland internal memo a few hours later. Subject: Organizational realignment for contractual integrity. Packed with jargon about modern accountability and transparency alignment. Like they were rolling out a new software update. Not covering the crater of a wreck Dana had spent the last year driving toward. I didn't bother reading the whole thing. Didn't have to. By the time that memo hit my inbox, I was already buried in work. 3 clients deep, building brand new compliance systems from scratch. One of them, a buyer who'd watched the Elridge mess from a safe distance, asked if I'd be willing to do a lunch and learn for their new contracts team. I said yes, but only if they were ready to actually listen, because that's what people always miss. This was never just about a clause. It was about the assumption, the deeply ingrained belief that certain people get to throw their weight around because of their last name, or who they're related to, or which executive dinner party they're invited to, while the people doing the real work are expected to stay quiet, eat the blame, and smile through it. But I didn't yell. I didn't torch the place. I just pointed at the line they signed. They laughed off a single text. It cost them a signature and the $140 million deal it was meant to protect.